The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
You gotta keep your head up high, up high. You gotta keep your head. You gotta keep your head. Heaven, do you see my struggle? Do you see my every tear that drifts down in the puddles? Can you hear my heart? Cause my life feeling like a puzzle. Sometimes I don't wanna take my head from under covers. Heaven, do you see my hunger? From the tribe of Judah, I'm a lion in the jungle. Lightning breaks and when I roar, I swear you feel the thunder. Guide me in the truth, I pray you always keep me humble. Look how far we come from. Stars get hard, but they gon' make you to an overcomer. I've been working daily, plotting moves, I'm on the come up. Still awake, I'm making music right before the sun up. Lift up your head and keep on moving, you gon' make it. Numbers loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. Loose my provisions and loose my blessings. Lose second guessing cause we've been tested through everything and back, and I'm still on track. You gotta keep your head.
Good morning this morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. It is Thursday, the 8th of May, 2025, and you are on the clock with Erin Greene. I got to stop right here and say thank you, producer. That song, Heads Up High, or Head Up High, is by Asher Simmons. He's a conscious rapper, musician, now based in London, Bahamian, definitely. Song inspires a diasporic experience when you're away from home. Sometimes the most patriotic Bahamians are the ones that do not live at home. And I know that because that was me for a minute, right? I want you all to know, Bahamians in the diaspora, they hunger for Bahamian content, right? It's their connection to home. It's their feel-good button at the end of a rough day in a foreign land, to hear familiar voices, to hear the jokes that you love, even if they're cracking them on you, right? That is a beautiful thing. So we say thank you to all the Bahamians making music, making content, right? Because these are the stories of our lives. Okay, we're going to get the show started. I want to remind you guys of the Loyalist Charles Farquharson Will Competition 2025, organized by Dennis Carlton Bethel, great-grandson of Loyalist Charles Farquharson. The competition is open to junior and high school students across the archipelago. 3 winners will be chosen, one from New Providence / Grand Bahama, one from San Salvador, the rest of the family islands. Now that we have singled out San Salvador, let you know a lot of Loyalist Charles Farquharson's time in the Bahamas, I think, was spent on San Sal, or that's where his plantation was, or the plantation named after him. I don't know anybody who's named things after people it didn't belong to. So I think it was his plantation. Anyway, here's what you need to do to win. We know students are in school at this time. So parents, if your student has an answer, you're going to call the show, tell us you want to participate in the Loyalist Charles Farquharson Will Competition. Hold the line. We'll transfer you to the producer. You need to give the producer the name of the student, contact information, the school they attend and the grade that they're in, the 2 answers, and then you wait for a call from the organizers. So here's what you need to win. You need to provide the government recording record of Charles Farquharson's will. That's the government recording record of Charles Farquharson's will and the date of Charles Farquharson's death. Provide those 2 pieces of information. The first correct submission is the winner. The prize money is over $400. And also added to that are a number of gift certificates and prizes. I think it's a wonderful competition. I've curiosity in young people about their roots, their own country, and it aims to also develop researching skills for young people. Yeah, I love the project. Let me say thank you to Dennis Carlton, Bethel. Now I have to make an apology. Yesterday I hung up on a caller. Caller, my apologies. Sir, uncle. Who's uncle to me? Right? Sir, uncle. I did hang up on you. Because you keep telling us that we can't do things, we can't organize, we can't push through this political quagmire, this development quagmire. And I can shut that down because we can. And we have a multitude of examples of people who find problems and were able to resolve them or create an environment in which they could be resolved without government leading it, without government having to initiate it, and in many instances without government even endorsing it, of course within the scope of the law. We must reignite that spirit within us, Bahamas. We have to. And my guest this morning provides an environment to do that sort of work, agitating, culture shifting. And they also provide tools for you to build your own environment, to empower other advocates, or to focus solely on your advocacy interests. I have joining me in studio today Vanessa Bethel from Organization for Responsible Governance. And we're going to talk a bit about that as we talk about two issues, Map for Good and org's new FOIA, that's Freedom of Information Act Hub. Very excited to hear about it. Before we go there, I just want to touch on one quick story. Ms. Bethel, I'm going to keep it quick. This story in today's Tribune. Monroe, I'm not aware of child abduction cases. National Security Minister Wayne Monroe says he's unaware of any failure by the Bahamas to meet its obligations under an abduction treaty following a U.S. report listing the country among the worst offenders. Okay, so I just want to start it. Maybe the headline is a little misleading. Maybe he's quoted, right, this is a quote pulled from the broader conversation, but in the first sentence we see that the minister is saying he's actually unaware of any failure by the country to meet its obligations under an international child abduction treaty. He denied any known violations under the Hague Convention on the Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction and said his ministry oversees the Trafficking in Persons Secretariat and has seen no such cases. So this is a very, very good wordsmith. He denied any known violations, right? Quote, abduction cases, I'm not aware of that, Mr. Monroe said. I know that my ministry coordinates the Trafficking in Persons Secretariat and we maintain the highest level of compliance for that. He speculated that the U.S. assessment may stem from custody battles involving parents rather than human trafficking. He added that the Bahamas is a Hague Convention signatory and said he previously worked on such matters in legal practice. He said, as a lawyer, there were a number of cases that I was involved in that involved cases under the Hague Convention on child abduction type. The children being here in the Bahamas and children who were taken from the Bahamas to the U.S. or to Canada. So I don't know what would cause that to be said about us, he said. The U.S. State Department's 2025 annual report on international child abduction designated the Bahamas as one of 15 nations showing a pattern of noncompliance, citing chronic delays, lack of legal action, and poor communication with U.S. authorities. The report highlighted an average delay of over 7 months in locating children once applications were filed. Rubio noted the Bahamas was the only new addition this year. The U.S. government said it would continue intensive engagement with Bahamian officials to resolve the compliance issues. So after reading that, I think I see what the problem is. And no, it's not necessarily the Minister of National Security, although he can be very problematic at times. I think the first problem is this. A couple of months ago, I read an article about an assailant, a suspect, a person before the courts who had been charged with abduction. The judge ended up saying, technically she organized the meetup. So even though he's charged with abduction, he didn't get that sentence. Are we not counting those cases where a minor is abducted by a romantic partner or abducted by a sexual predator attempting to groom that minor into a romantic or sexual relationship? Are we not counting those cases as abduction cases? Because they are. They are abduction cases. Or do we, I mean by we, you, me, believe, like the former DPP had to clarify his statements in 2022. You think these girls fast? You think they're highly sexualized and thus this doesn't qualify as abduction? Is that what it is? Because technically those cases are, I grew up in Johnson Road, and I almost fell on the floor when I learned about this Rasta man. I don't know or if he would come and free Johnson Road, but a Rasta man, he had this teenage girl locked up in his house for a couple of years. So that's the first thing. Are you not like counting those assessing those cases as actual abductions? Because I think they are. Anyway, the next point is this. Are we all not painfully aware that one of the government's biggest issues is its inability to move at the pace of its own policies? Its inability to move at the pace of its own policies. Or worse, its unwillingness to divert the resources necessary to enhance services so that you can actually deliver the policy that you wrote, that you created. I remember being in COB, it was COB at the time, COB UE Law School, and having a lecturer sit us down and tell us they're now going to require us to sign a contract acknowledging that when the lecturer created the schedule of courses for the year, they knew that they did not allocate enough class sessions for the amount of material that needed to be. Requiring us to sign a contract indicating that not only are we prepared to come to classes outside of the technically contractually contracted schedule, but that we are consenting to being penalized for not attending those extra classes that may be called on a whim. And I thought, okay, y'all created a course and didn't put enough time in it. Anyway, it's the same thing. Like, how is it that you cannot move at the pace of your own policies? And why is it that you think that as the government you don't have to? I mean, that's extremely problematic. 7 months? An average delay of over 7 months in locating children once applications were filed. Fire trucks are delayed, the ambulances are delayed. Things just going slow. Anyway, I wanted to put that story into the record. I think it's very important because we're talking about children. We're talking about children, young people who have, in many instances, very little control over their own circumstances. But we're going to get into this show. I got some texts here. Why y'all send me such exciting texts first thing in the morning? Texters, I'm going to get to those texts a little later in the show. I want to bring my guests into the conversation, a different conversation, because we're talking about Organization for Responsible Governance. We're talking about two pillars of their current agenda of activities. The first is Map for Good, a CSO, that's a civil society organization coordinating mechanism, right? Identifying organizations in the country, what they do, who they're connected with, in an attempt to create a tool that CSOs can use, that the government can use, that private sector people could use, that individuals can use, right?
Everybody.
Absolutely. The second is the new FOIA hub. I'm excited about that. I just want to say a shout out to Margot Bethel and Chipper Redwood, that you all may know as John O. Murray, for founding and running the Hub for a long time, which was a great community space where a lot of community actors attached to civil society would hang out. Anyway, good morning, Vanessa. Let's start with Map for Good, right? How many NPOs or CSOs, NPO is nonprofit organization, civil society organization. Both are non-governmental organizations, but NPO captures a larger group of people, and CSO would kind of be a subset in NPO. So how many of these civil society and advocacy and activism organizations have been captured so far, roughly?
Currently, I'm working with a list of, and this is, not everybody has been verified. I'm in the process of working on that, but I'm currently working with a list of 1,600.
Did you say
organization-
1,600?
And to be clear, that includes faith-based organizations.
Yeah, as well.
So that would be the bulk of those organizations, but there are many, many organizations out there. And that list that maybe no longer, because, COVID caused a lot of,
Organizations to fall away or to consolidate.
or
right?
consolidate, right? So some fell away for various reasons. Some new ones popped up. So we're in the process of really trying to verify who's active, what they're doing and where they are. And to do that, we're obviously needing those organizations to participate with us. And as you said, this is meant to be as a tool for us as a sector to use to better collaborate and to better, navigate, especially when we're all having, really important missions. Some are in the policy space, some are very community driven, some are education driven. There's a wide plethora. You have waste management, which is a really important component for society and our environment and all of these things. Right?
Whenever you say that, I have to stick a pin. Let me tell you all something. Our sanitation engineers and technicians are along with doctors and teachers and police and firemen, they are some of our most important essential services. This country
Absolutely.
would fall apart without them. And when you see them,
Absolutely. And this is a thing that we actually talk about a lot in our active citizen programming, which we do a lot of work with kids in that, about understanding the importance of how every single person in our society contributes to the successful functioning, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we can undervalue certain individuals, right? But in terms of nonprofit and faith-based organizations, there's a wide array of what that can look like. For example, our sports associations and our and things like that are a part of that world, and and they bring like community enrichness for the youth and things like that. And so we're really trying to capture all of those for us as a sector to better coordinate and provide services, but also for the public to better access, the support they need, but also, people want to volunteer, people want to donate, and being able to better recognize who's out there. It's a big task. Like I said, I'm working from a list of 1,600.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been working diligently to meet with as many organizations. I recently was in Abaco meeting with organizations. It was really great. Folks get it. They I had one conclave meeting sort of with a group of organizations who are actually housed in the same building. And they spoke about the value of just by happenstance, because they're housed in the same building. And even though they're all environmental organizations, they work in very specific separate fields. But because they are inherently there, talking happens, and that inherently enriches each other's work, right? And so, they were saying about, having a tool that can magnify that across all of the islands would be incredibly powerful. I've been talking about harnessing the power of the organizations.
And communal space, right? Because an organization becomes a specific type of community, right? And important to examine the ways in which we engage each other in different types of communities. And here's what I found. We tight on knowledge. We're not talking to each other about real things. And a lot of organizations and people could benefit from what it is we have inside our brains, right? And so the environment creates a space in which you engage freely. And you would be surprised at the sort of cross-sectional energy, like catalyst, right? That happens when somebody hears what you're talking about and then realizes that this is actually an intersection with what it is we're doing over here.
Yeah, there's a lot more intersection than I think we realize on the surface. And there's a lot, like you're saying, there's a ton of knowledge that, so that's part of the collaborative process. And that's about sharing knowledge, sharing resources. One of the people I met in Abaco started a community library, right? And I visited this library and it was amazing. And she herself said, I would love to be able to speak with others and share what I've learned, how to, because they're doing it with very little money, right? So how do they function? How, cheap app to how you catalog your books and all of that. And she's so eager. She would be so excited to share that type of knowledge. And many people in the community are, right? It's just finding and creating and building the mechanisms to facilitate it.
The coordinating mechanisms. I was going to say, with 1,600 organizations, and you said the majority of them are faith-based?
I would say so. We haven't quite done a percentage data analysis yet. We're prepping to go into that over the next few months. But yes, the majority would be faith-based.
At your location, looking at the map, could the faith-based sector of the civil society benefit from an umbrella organization which would operate as a coordinating mechanism, right? Some of the functions would be that the umbrella organization itself, aware of the needs of the organizations under the umbrella, engage in a broad grant writing and fundraising, donor identifying, sponsor sending, and take the burden off of smaller groups who are busy trying to do all they can with the little that they have, right? And sort of lighten that load by putting that coordinating mechanism, right? Because then that coordinating mechanism could do things like, hey, so-and-so, I see that you applied for a grant from this organization, but I need you to know that this organization is not enabled to donate money in this region. Here are 5 or 6 organizations that do or can legally from their jurisdiction engage financially and donate in this jurisdiction.
And and that's certainly where we're trying to go. I mean, all of that won't happen in this first iteration.
Right,
of the
and
project.
that's not necessarily org's responsibility.
But we want to create the landscape to enable that type of coordination and effort. And so one of the things, in our data analysis that we're looking to do, and this is why it's really important for those organizations, because we want to, I have a list, but I don't always know, if every single contact I have is correct, whether those details are up to date. We want to make sure the map has all of that information, and we want to conduct. It's a very brief survey we're going to be looking to conduct to verify those key bits of information, and making sure we have a clear understanding of what their mission is and what programs they offer and what their programming is like. That way, the data analysis, we're going to be able to identify clusters. Like these are similar types of organizations that are working on these similar types of issues. We can easily identify and search and filter in the map to present that information in a very effective way, right? And then we're looking to build upon that and create sort of mechanisms for people to start resource sharing. And because that itself is a skill when we're all chugging away on a daily basis, just trying to do what we're going to do, to carve out the time to be like, how do I strategically think about doing that? And org actually does trainings about that, right? So we're looking to share the resources that we already have to help build the foundation for organizations to better be able to do this. And then we're currently working on seeking funding to then build in additional components that has more information about donors, and of course, like grant writing is a training that we offer, and we have free resources, including video demonstrations and things like that. There's other organizations, the Caribbean Policy Development Center, Civil Society Bahamas is collaborating on things like that. So there's stuff out there. It's just not always getting to where it needs to be.
A number of organizations locally could grow capacity, right? Tremendously if they were able to connect with a wider array of donors.
Absolutely.
Thinking specifically about the EU, right? And in my time in advocacy, I've never applied or written for a grant or any type of financial support from the EU, not personally, because you need to. It's almost as if you need to do a certification, a professional certification
so
course.
the EU is a great example. They're very particular in their grant writing and grant processes, and also how even if once you get the grant, how the requirements they have on reporting, right? So these are skills that organizations have to be able to successfully win these grants, but then follow through with effective reporting and project implementation, right? And so these are the skills that we're looking to cultivate, so everybody's better equipped to achieve what they're setting out to do.
Yeah, if I were a young professional, right, trying to figure out, like, can I work at home and abroad? If I'm a young professional in the States or in Europe or in the UK, and I'm thinking, I want to work abroad, but I also want to support Bahamians. I want to work in a supranational or intergovernmental space, so like UN, OAS, a World Trade Organization, International Labor Organization, right? Consider certifying yourself to support organizations in their grant writing process, specifically EU engagement. I mean, they're so particular that the page has to be laid out properly.
Yep.
Each page has a specific layout, and if you don't follow that layout, you run the risk of being rejected. Right, the reporting, the grant writing is very strenuous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have grants too that could be, EU plus another organization. So then you're dealing with sort of
Protocols from two jurisdictions. Yeah.
And so it can get a bit challenging, especially when, you're just on the ground. You don't have a specific grant writer. You're trying to pull out the, time and effort to get all of these details right. So you can, get the resources that you need to implement your projects. Right. And so that's certainly challenging. And this is exactly the type of thing we're thinking about when we're with our goals of Map for Good, right?
I was just thinking, the boy Sisyphus, that's his name, the one with the big boulder trying to push it up the hill all the time.
Yes.
Yeah, like trying to push it up Cumberland Hill and it just keep rolling back down. It becomes like that. I need a grant so that I could get a grant writer.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And that, right? But to find that and the effort, right? But this is where sometimes then you can benefit from the institutional knowledge of other organizations who've already gone through that. And they're sharing that knowledge of like, hey, look at this organization. They have a tendency to do these organizational capacity grant funding opportunities, right? So, but that's where it becomes as a resource sharing. It's financial, it's knowledge, it's experience. There's also some organizations that inherently, by where they're at in their development, they're going to be small and they're not going to maybe have certain things that allow them to just like hop, skip, and a jump right to that. But then that doesn't mean that they can't be sort of sponsored by a larger organization, right? Where and sponsored not just in financials, but in experience of like, well, let's do this project under our umbrella. You're going to be the implementer, but you're going to function under our umbrella. We can then sponsor by doing the actual application process, and so there's different configurations that can happen. Right? We have to start somewhere with who's out there, who's doing what, and making those connections and making those linkages.
Absolutely. I had a transition point just now. I'm looking at the article with Keisha Ellis from Hands for Hunger. It's org announces Map for Good to help nonprofit organizations, posted in the Nassau Tribune 6th of November last year for people who are interested. And she addresses as director of Hands for Hunger, she addresses the financial crisis, right, in terms of funding and finding funders, but also highlights the collaborative effort and the importance of that collaborative effort. It reminded me of Equality Bahamas' theme for 16 Days of Activism, because it was right around the same time, right? The guest, one of the featured speakers, was a writer. I want to say Sumaya. Anyway, she's a well-known writer. And she shared with us a presentation rooted in her work in her latest book about resilience. We call it anti-resilience, though, right? Because we have been conditioned, socialized, taught to believe that resilience means relying only on yourself. I did it all on my own. And we have many people who claim when they acknowledge their successes, right? Their achievements. And I meant to say successes because we talk about people with multiple major national level projects, right? They're talking about, it takes resilience and you have to be resilient, and I was resilient, and you can't lean on others. When in fact, that's the opposite of resilience. Resilience, the ability to identify what resources do exist and then to connect with them, right? Like that's at the heart of resilience. It's not that I did it all on my own, but I realized where my weaknesses were, and then I empowered myself to reach out and say, hey, in this space I am weak and I need support, or I need connection, right? I just need to intersect with your organization to glean and grab some things.
Yeah, resilience isn't it just about be doing it because while it's hard, it's a skill set of identifying how do I do it. Knowing I have whatever structural
Identifying
individual
the elements.
challenges.
Right.
It's really about how do I navigate this? What is the way forward? And that doesn't always just mean you gritting and bearing through it, right? It's exactly what you're saying. How do I reach out to this person and what do they bring? And then, so like your analogy of the pushing up the stone, the boulder up the hill, right? Imagine if there's multiple people behind that boulder. Imagine if somebody came with a crane. You know what I mean? Like who can bring what? And also we all may be pushing the boulder for different reasons, but what makes up that boulder is all interconnected. All of the reasons that we're doing the work we're doing, they are interconnected. Society and doesn't function in silos. Any issue you can find the linkage to another organization, some more obvious than others, but that's how things work. Nothing is happening in isolation, right? And so,
Hold on, and even when, in some instances, the step that you took up was on someone's back, right? On someone's back.
Absolutely.
Or an entire community, right? And your success results from a disadvantaging of, right? Or a lowering of others. And so even then, that's not self-reliance. At all, right?
Let's bring each other up.
Yeah.
Let's find the way that we all move forward, onward and upward together, right? Like honestly, that's what it's really about. And we can do that. I'm not saying it's easy, but we can, and we can find ways forward.
Absolutely. Producer, you don't have a song about rising tide, lift all boat, eh? I need to find, that's my research for the weekend. I have to search for any Bahamian song that has that lyric in it.
Yeah.
Right? Producer, let's go to a break. When we come back from let's prepare for a break. When we come back from the break, I'm going to touch on the text line, and then we're going to Freedom of Information Act and the new advocacy tool that org has developed. You're on the clock with Erin Greene. We're tuned into Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll be right back.
Well, I gave you the number one and I drove it home. When I gave a number one, I drove it home.
Just sign in and have a seat, please. They'll call you in for your x-ray shortly.
That's why they call it a waiting room. You won't have that problem at Fourth Terrace Diagnostic Center or Imaging at Grosvenor. We never schedule multiple appointments, so you'll be in and out in no time. And if your initial screening reveals a concern, our radiologist can conduct an alternative screening right then and there. Call 328-8157 to schedule an appointment at Fourth Terrace Diagnostic Center or Imaging at Grosvenor today.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
At Cleveland Clinic, care is everything. So when your primary purpose is to care for the world, you'd start with your community until you're accessible anywhere. You make complexities your specialties and put compassion before anything else, all to redefine what's possible for everyone, everywhere, for every care in the world. Cleveland Clinic.
Here's a price list of some of the roofing material we carry at Pinda Enterprises. 5/8 pressure-treated roofing ply starting at $36.68. Gray Select Water Shield, $134.20 a roll. Felt, 15 pounds, $16.50. Duration shingles and CertainTeed landmark shingles, $56.56 a bundle. Gallon of roof cement, $33.47. All sizes treated dimensional lumber. And of course, we have all nails and all screws. We have 5/8 sheetrock, $28.76. Half-inch sheetrock, $22.18. All prices include VAT.
Sticking. 7-5 yo. So we tell them back. Oh yeah, we waited. We anticipated. So we tell them the season is here. Study misbehaving and less gyrated. So we tell them back. The season is here. So we tell them time to drink up, time to jam up, time to come and join the line. Time to wind them from behind them. Loose it up and free we mind. Time to drink up, time to jam up, time to come and join the line. Time to wind them. Happy birthday. It's carnival time. Happy birthday.
Let me say happy belated birthday to Koji Wright. Koji Wright, happy belated birthday. Francine Godson, happy belated birthday. Patricia Powell, happy belated birthday. I know I did miss some birthdays, but
I know of one.
Who?
Org would love to wish you a happy belated birthday.
By thanking you. I'm thanking you very much. Okay, in the break, you see that the music was playing, the music is Sweet A. In the break, I had an idea, inspired by somebody else in studio. I can't tell you who it is. However, the idea is this. Imagine, as we are redeveloping downtown, right? The government has already implemented a system for downtown, like Iowa City, who's probably had it for about 25, 30 years now. Anyway, the point is, we're almost there. Imagine now if throughout the stretch from east of East Street, east of Elizabeth, definitely, all the way down to Pompey, that you have speaker systems, right? Because you can need speaker system. Imagine a tornado come and you can tell the tourists seek shelter. And then here's what the vibe is, though. Like it plays music, like at random intervals during the day, it blasts local Bahamian music, and all Bahamians just stop what they're doing and start dancing for like 15, 30 seconds. And then the music stops, because we know what to do. When the music stops, you just keep going about your business. Mm-hmm. You pick the conversation up where you dropped it, right? I think like that would delight tourists. It would delight tourists, but more importantly, it would feed our souls.
Yes.
Because that's the most important, that's a priority.
Absolutely.
It would feed our souls. And I have some texts here. I don't know if these are intended to feed my soul or not, but let me read them very quickly. It says, why are we celebrating? Do a separate show on that text. Are you referring to the Charles Farquharson will competition? We are not celebrating a slave owner. There is a familial linkage with this particular individual. We are encouraging young people to engage in research about the place where they're from. But I want to thank you. I can do a whole show on it with the organizer. There's a lady, maybe American, not sure in court, now charged with kidnapping her child. I think the question wasn't just failure, but also the speed of the remedy. And that text was sent much earlier in the conversation. I think I spoke to that. Can the government move at the pace of its own policies? Mm-hmm. Does it understand? Can it move at the pace of its own policies? Can it move at the pace required for the economy that it wants to exist? Right? Because what happens is they lapse, they're lacking, they're mediocre. And what happens is that the lowest of us get squeezed out, right? Because they're not working fast enough to grow the economy at the pace necessary to capture all people. Okay, abduction is defined as taking someone away against their will. If the person went willingly, then it is not abduction by definition. But like, what if it's a minor? I'm just saying, I feel you, Tex. I appreciate what you're saying. That the person is a minor without parental consent doesn't change that, but we can make it another offense by another name if it hasn't been done already. But just like statutory rape, let's not change definitions. Okay, cool. What happens if the girl went willingly to the location with no intention of staying? What if she is then unable to leave? What if she'd been there for 5-7 days, had a good time, and then thought, because you get that feeling, vacation over. I need to go back. Individual fearing that they would be arrested, say, oh no, I can't let you go. You can stay here until you turn 17, 18. You can stay here until you turn 18. I'm just saying, are there circumstances that could change a willing participant into an abductee? But thank you very much for the text. Text another quick one. Good morning. Do you feel like Rodney Munker and Daryl Miller deserves their own nationally recognized day, or maybe they can be recognized as national heroes? Okay, texter, you are asking the wrong person. I could be honest with you. Mr. Miller and I think, made amends later in night. You know what an intercession is? When you pray to Mary to intercede on your behalf? At an agribusiness expo, a woman came up to my booth and saw Daryl Miller walking past and said, I want a picture with two of my favoriteest people. And I had to go take a picture with this woman and Daryl Miller. This is after Daryl Miller went to court and said the most amazingly wild things about me in front of a judge in a massive court. Let's put that aside. The second one. Rodney Munker? Do these people deserve recognition? Sure. Do they need to be recognized as national heroes? Let me put my bias on the table. No. Let me take my bias off the table. It's worthy of consideration. I wouldn't die if you all had a conversation about it. I would probably partake in the conversation. But if you come at me with this whole, you can't speak ill of the dead, no, you can't do this and you can't do that. If we're going to honor people, then we have to be prepared to delve into every corner of their life. Simple. The question is, are you prepared to do that? After you are exposed to the fullness of the person, do you think that you would still acknowledge them as a national hero? Anyway, let's go to the phone line quickly. Producer? Good morning, caller.
Miss Greene, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, sir. Glad you called back, and I'm sorry about yesterday.
And your guest. What I called for today, I was listening about an hour and a half ago. And we were talking about Mr. Henry Boswick and Mr. Rodney Munker. And I want to know if you agree with me or not.
Okay.
I tell them at this stage now, Rodney Munker is more popular than Mr. Boswick. Okay? And I tell them, if they want to give a number to a funeral, Rodney would outnumber him 3-1.
I feel you.
In attendance.
Yeah. See, this is why I'm saying the conversation is worth having, because we not expose, but we raise so many things, right? Because Rodney was a people's champion.
He was.
Right? But I'm not sure if this time period in which Rodney was popular, right? Let me rephrase it. Rodney Munker led a full life. Like, I got a copy of The Revelations of a Living Legend, the memoirs of Dr. Arrington Washington Isaacs Watkins Sr. Rodney Munker led a life like Bumpy Watkins, right? And all of it needs to be documented. But I think...
Can I say this?
Yeah.
I would go on a limb and call Mr. Munker a baby Penland. Because of the fight for the people, because of he was the voice for the voiceless. The people who couldn't speak, he spoke for them.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not taking nothing from Mr. Boswick,
I appreciate that as well.
He did his part. But let's make sense. Let's make sense with it.
Okay.
If they were to, I know it can't happen, but if they were to bury Mr. Boswick and Rodney Munko on the same day, Rodney Munko would outweigh him 3-1.
All right. And I think, that's a great place to end it, right? And I think, that's the best approach to it.
Listening.
Yes, sir. And thank you for calling back.
Yes, sir.
That don't have both funerals on the same day. Right? That's how we're going to honor the dead. Don't have both funerals on the same day. Right? Thank you for the question. Again, like I said, I like to declare my biases and put them on the table. I ain't ready to talk about Munka yet, so. Ms. Bethel.
Yes.
Org using technology to push FOIA advocacy. The Organization for Responsible Government has turned to technology to help Bahamians learn about and actively advocate for the full enactment of this country's Freedom of Information Act. Org's dedicated hub is designed to help Bahamians learn about FOIA and then prepare them to take action to help convince the government to fully enact it. So tell us, what does the hub look like?
Sure. So with the hub, you have graphics that make it easy to see some of the key information. For example, some of the timelines of the fact that, FOIA was passed in 2017, but we're still not fully enacted.
And so we'll be able to identify the parts that have been enacted and the parts that haven't been enacted?
A little bit, because right now what we have is a information commissioner that's ready.
Mm-hmm.
They have an implementation plan, but they don't have enough funding to actually. So really, there's not a functioning office.
Right. And
So in theory, there are things in place, but not really. So that's a key component. It's been identified that the budget would need to be somewhere around $1 million for the office to function.
All right. And in this article, it indicates that in the 2024-2025 annual budget, the government only allocated $140,000.
Correct.
For FOIA.
Yeah, so unfortunately, while there's been progress made, it's not where it needs to be for the legislation and all of the benefits to be available to the public.
From the office of the
information commissioner.
The information commissioner.
Yeah, and they, I'm sure that they've used that budget effectively to formulate plans and implement what they can. But it's not a fully functioning.
No, because like you said, they have to outfit the office,
and people have to be trained.
Right, they have to pay for staff. They have to train the staff in that office, and then we know that the pilot project captured 10 government agencies and ministries, right?
Yes.
So there's the training of the staff in that space to be able to interact with the Information Commission office, right?
Correct.
And then there is the public awareness campaigns and education campaigns that need to take place as well. And so with roughly a tenth of a projected
and the technology
budget,
for all of these things.
Because
right?
you can't FOIA with the beige computers. I need y'all to understand this. You see they hacked ZNS?
Yeah.
Because y'all had the beige computers?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know this. But the point is, they didn't know we had the beige computers.
But also, it goes back to your point, to effectively manage services, you need the equipment that you need to process the requests in a timely manner, to track the progress, all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need the technology, and that includes your actual hardware, but also the software and things like that. And also, protecting data and security and things like that. So and FOIA is, one of our policy priorities, as our mission is around promoting the principles of good governance, to empower all people and create a landscape for us to thrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, those principles include transparency, accountability, effective and efficient services, all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 16 established principles. And I just want to reiterate that, we didn't make them up. These are globally established principles, that we understand through dedicated research of how societies thrive, right? And so this is why FOIA is a strong policy priority for us. And this tool will allow individuals to go onto the website all you have to do is, there's a drafted template of a letter we've already put together, but you are able to plug in which constituency you belong to, and there's a section where you can add a personalized component, and then and we ask, why do you think that this, what is needed for FOIA to succeed, right? And that includes budget, education, whatever. And you can choose that, and then you submit, and then it sends an email to you with that letter formalized and the email for your MP, and then all you have to do is cut and paste that into your email, press send. We do ask if you're willing to CC citizens@orgbahamas.com, just so we can then track how many people are actually sending it out. But it's up to you to put your content there. But it's drafted in a way that's to the point and respectful, but getting your point across of this is important.
Absolutely. We're all out of time, but I know we have another session left.
Yes.
I want you to know, if I could sneak a peek at that map right now, right, I would ask you, could you identify all of the CSOs, all of the groups, NGOs who work with young people?
We're not at the point where I could say all, because we're in the process of categorizing. But you will be.
Okay.
You will be.
All right. Let me just get to the text line before we go. Good point, Erin, but I think that falls under illegally detaining people. So that's the initial texter. And so I guess what the text is saying is that in those circumstances where the individual has changed their mind, then the unlawful detention, right, which is an offense under the law. Another text, who cares about either of those men? I don't. We have more pressing issues at hand than to worry about the dead. Texter, listen, I thank you for sending this text, right? Because no matter what my feelings are about those two individuals, I don't think it's appropriate for us to create that environment, right? I know a lot of people say, let the dead bury the dead, right? But we in this country have a crisis, and we do not know how to honor the dead. Yeah? Anyway, out of time. Thank you, producer, for playing that music. Listen, if y'all can, pick up a copy of The Revelations of a Living Legend, the memoirs of Dr. Arrington Washington Isaac Watkins Sr. Because when I start reading from this book, I don't want y'all to tell me I lie. I want you to have a copy of the book so you could look at it yourself and verify it. Anyway, Vanessa Bethel, thank you for the birthday greetings. You guys, thank you for the calls, the texts. Stay tuned. Guardian Radio AM with C.A. Muri is up next.
Listen, you know my pressure ready to attack. They say, Mr. Please don't row us. Go check them, send round back. I rush round to the back to see where all was gone. Them cooks take my roast beef, my chicken and my corn. Not a slow-mode woman who couldn't get enough. She say, yours had any more than good stuff and stuff. I say, woman, get out my yard before you make me boil. She look at me, she suck her teeth, say, child, wait a while. When you torture they will cause you plenty of stress. Cause before your party half over, you ain't gonna have nothing left. All your food they will.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Streaming on GuardianTalkRadio.com and the Guardian Radio app. Nassau, Bahamas.